Hey, everybody. Welcome to part two of Surrender to Jail. Like I said on the previous episode, I didn't think we'd be able to finish this season, which I'm titling Surrender to Jail, in one episode. I'm hoping that we'll be able to finish it on this episode. Definitely, if we don't finish it on this episode, definitely by the next one, but I'm pretty sure we'll be able to wrap it up on this one. But thank you for tuning in. My name is Jay. I'm your host. If you've been following along on this journey, again, I say this all the time, but I can't say it enough. I appreciate y'all so much. I'm so appreciative that you're coming along with me on this journey. Especially um, this 9 year healing journey, over the last 9 years. And I just appreciate y'all so much. I love that y'all have reached out, and it's been great. All right, so thank you so much. On the last episode, well, before we get into it, let me say this: if I love connecting with people, and I love hearing people's stories, and I would love to connect with you, even if you've already reached out. I love the interaction and talking about my story, talking about your story, and if you haven't reached out, please do. You can email me at unfeignedpodcast@gmail.com. Again, unfeignedpodcast@gmail.com. All right, so let's dive in. On the last episode, I left it at me being arrested. So I'm going to give you a recap. I'm going to give you a brief recap of that event, and then we'll go from there. So, um, if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, probably a good idea that you go do that so that this makes more sense. So I'm driving my youngest son home from soccer practice, and on the way home, sorry, not on the way home. I was driving him to drop him off with his mother. All right, we were gonna exchange. Like I was gonna give him to his mom, and he was gonna go with her. And on the way to doing that, we always met at a school parking lot, and that was sort of like the drop off, place. And so we were on the way there, and maybe a mile or so from the school parking lot where we were going to, where I was going to let my youngest son go with his mom. There's a church, and I see the lights light up behind me, right? So I'm like, oh man. So I pulled into this little back road entrance way to the church. And if you listen to the last episode, you know that being pulled over in the car that I was driving was normal. It was a normal thing because it didn't have a license plate. So I understand. I get it because when, cops behind me, they see a car without a license plate. I know their first thought is stolen vehicle. And so I get it. I wasn't ever mad that I got pulled over. Plus, the DMV told me, like, you're going to get pulled over. Just show them all this paperwork. As long as you have all this, you'll be good. And so getting pulled over that night, coming home from soccer practice, it wasn't anything that we were afraid of or nervous about or anything like that. It was just normal. And so as we're getting pulled over, I pull down this little entrance way to the church, and I lean back and I'm like, hey bud, it's gonna be okay. you know the drill, right? 10 minutes, the most 15 minutes. And not that it ever really took that long. It was basically 5 to 10 minutes. So like, we'll be out of here. All right, it's all good. So just, you'll be all right, don't worry about it. And so we're just sitting there, right? I think I gave him my phone so he could play like a little game or something. Cop comes over to the window, rolls it down, and the same old story. So I'm like, hey, is it about I'm not having license plates? And he's like, yeah, what's going on, right? So I tell him the story. I explain the whole thing. I give him all the paperwork. He looks at me. He's like, hey, no problem. I get it. Like, give me just a few minutes, and I'll let y'all be on your way. So I was like, okay. So he goes back to the cop car, and we're just sitting in the car, and Jackson's in the front seat now, and I'm driving, um and as we're sitting there, we're just talking, and we're not thinking anything of it because, again, this is a normal thing, right? We're like, this is something we've already been in these situations. We're used to it. We know what's going to happen. Well, it's like 10 minutes and the cop hasn't come back yet. And then it's like 15 minutes and the cop hasn't come back yet. Now it's going on like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And I'm like, something doesn't seem right. Like, something just seems off. And my son was like, is everything gonna be okay? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of weird. But I'm like, hey, maybe they're just checking on stuff, right? Well, the cop comes back to the car and he kind of leans to the side and it's like, "Hey, can you step out of the car for a second?" So I'm like, "Okay, just hey, bud, just hang out, stay there. You'll be fine. Everything will be totally fine." He just wants to talk to me. So in the meantime, before this happened, as I got pulled over, I was texting my ex-wife just saying, "Hey, I got pulled over. So this is the deal. We're gonna be a little late, but 5, 10 minutes, we'll be out of here. I'll have I'll meet you at the school." But then while we were sitting there and it got longer, I sent another text and said, "Hey, it's taking way longer than usual. I don't know what's going on." So he asks me to step out of the car and says, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" So while I'm out there, he says, "Listen, I don't want to do this in front of your son. I don't know another way. I feel really terrible. I don't want to really do this where he's seen this, but you're under arrest." And I was like, "What?" It's like, like in that moment, I thought I was being punked, right? Like I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like what for what?" He was like, "I don't really know. I don't know all the details yet. But I have to place you under arrest. There's a warrant out for your arrest." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me right now?" So I was like, can I at least text his mother to let her know so she can come pick him?" And he allowed me to do that. So while he was there, and so I'm texting my ex-wife and said, "Hey, this is what's going on. I don't know what it's for. I don't know why. I don't know what this is all about, but can you come to where we're at and get my son?" So she comes, she's there. My son is going to her and I give him a hug and say goodbye and everything will be okay. And in front of my ex-wife and my son, they put me in cuffs and they're putting me in the cop car and I can see my son's worried and it was just I mean my heart was being torn out of my chest at that point. And because at the same time I'm like, what what in the hell is going on? Like what is the deal here? So I'm sitting in the back of the cop car and my ex-wife leaves with my son and I'm literally trying to think of what I could have done. And no, nothing. There was nothing. And so he gets in the car and he says, "This is what it's for." And he tells me what it's for. And I was like, and at first I was confused because I was like, "Wait, are you saying that this was done to me? Like that's what somebody did to me?" And he's like, "No, it says that you did it." And I was like, "Wait, well, wait a second. I never did that." And he was like, "I don't know." I mean, the cop was he was a cool dude. He was just doing his job. He was nice. He was kind. Like he wasn't a douchebag or anything. And he was literally, I mean, no joke, we were literally trying to figure this out together. I mean, looking back, it's a bit comical of our exchange in the cop car. It definitely wasn't funny at the time, but so I'm sitting back there and I'm like, he's asking me, he's like, "Can you think of anything? Is there anyone or anything?" And we're going through these things. I'm like, "No, really." And I even suggested a few scenarios that I thought maybe could be misunderstood of what I was being accused of. And I was like, "But that doesn't make sense." And he's like, "Well, listen, when we get to the station, I'll go in, I'll grab the paper, I'll come back out before I take you in so that I can give you all the information," which was cool. He didn't have to do that. So we get to the station, and the whole ride to the station, I'm like, I can't understand what's going on. I can't believe this is going on because I can't think of anything. I couldn't think of anything, not one thing at all. And and at the same time, so I'm also thinking like, are you freaking kidding me? Like I literally just got back on my feet. I like just started to get my life back on track. Things started to look up and I was in a good place and things were working out and I was going to be able to take care of some things and then this. And in the meantime, as I'm being arrested and put in the back of the cop car, the cop says, "Listen," and there was another cop that showed up too. And he's like, "Listen, we're going to move your car. We're going to park your car so that it doesn't get towed. That's important to remember." So he's like, "We're going to park your car over there in the parking lot, in the church parking lot, so it does not get towed." Like, okay, great. All right, so we're on the way to the station. We arrive at the station, and he goes in, and he's like, "I'll be right out. I'm just going to grab the paperwork and figure this stuff out." So he comes back out, and he says, "Do you know this person? And this is what it's for." And I was just like, "Are you freaking kidding me right now?" And I thought of one thing that happened, and it was earlier in the year, like in May or something. And I thought back to that could have been the only thing that it could be, right? And it was an unbelievably huge misunderstanding. Like, this person misread the whole situation. And what I was being accused of was completely false. So what it said was, and again, I leave out details on most of these episodes because for a couple reasons. One, I don't want this podcast to turn into just stories about my life, right? I could do that, you know, but that's not the purpose of this particular podcast. The other reason is to protect people, right? And um, so I do it for a few reasons, but also I'll say this as a disclaimer: if you want to go deeper, if you want to talk about some of these details that I leave out, and you have questions, and you're like, "Wait, I want to know what happened," or "I want to know what the accusation was," or whatever it is, I will gladly talk to you privately, right? So email me. That's why I set up this email, because I want to um, do these kinds of things with y'all, right? Because even in the details, it's not so that I can just be like, hey, let me tell you all the details of everything that happened. But in those details, there's growth and healing and all of that. And I would love to do that one-on-one. All right. So if you have questions, if you're interested, if you want to hear more about the story or whatever it is, just email me, right? unfeignedpodcast@gmail.com. And I would love to tell you more of the story. All right. So let's get back to where we were at. So, excuse me. There's one thing I did not do what I was being accused of, specifically because it said I knowingly did this specific thing, and that could not have been further from the truth. And I continued to plead with the officer. I was like, "Listen, I didn't do this. I didn't do what it says." Now obviously it's out of his hands. He's doing his job, but I did not do what I was being accused of. And so, like, this resentment just kind of started to build inside me, as anger, because I was like, I did not do this. Like, what is going on? And there were so many questions. There was so much confusion. Like, why couldn't this have happened? Why didn't this happen? What is going, like, what's the reason for this? And that there were just so many unanswered questions. And the whole time I was thinking, I did not do what I was accused of. I didn't do it. So they take me in. Right, I go into the station. I got to sit down. I got to be booked in. Right, so you go through the whole procedure. Fingerprints, mugshot, all that stuff. Right, and they, after they do all that kind of stuff, they take you to the holding room. Right, it's like the cell phone room, not the cell phone room, like the phone room. They have a payphone on the wall. But before you do that, like when you're getting booked in, they say, "Listen, you have about a minute." They give me like a minute to go through my phone and write down any numbers that I felt like I would need if I go to jail. Right, now I don't know what's going on. I've never been to jail. I've never spent time in jail before. Right, so not like this. So I didn't really know what was going on. And so when they said, "Hey, you have a minute. Here's your phone. We'll let you go through it, but then we have to take everything. You can't have anything. So write down whatever numbers, like if it's your family or friends or whatever, because that's the only thing that you're allowed to take with you into the jail." So they gave me a little piece of paper, and it's funny. It really is funny, because when you're blindsided like that, it was extremely unexpected. I didn't do what I was being accused of, right? I didn't break the law like they said I did. And so when you're blindsided like that, you're not prepared. I didn't prepare like I did something and then one day I knew it would catch up with me. It wasn't anything like that. So you're not prepared, and so your mind isn't focused on that. So when they say you have a minute or two, here's your phone, take down whatever numbers, there are so many numbers that I could have written down. And it's funny because, nowadays you don't remember anybody's number, right? Everybody's just a name in your phone, right? So I, never had anybody's numbers memorized, right? So whatever numbers I wrote down would be the only people that I'd be able to call. And so I'm just going through, and I, whatever numbers popped into my head, which was like my mom and my oldest son and my daughter, right? So I wrote those names down. I wrote down the name of a pastor friend, right? Um, and I wrote down the name of a guy that was in my men's group, right? And so I'm pretty sure those are the only numbers that I wrote down. My mom, my kids, my pastor, who I was friends with, and then a guy who led the men's group I was a part of at the church. So I have these numbers, right? And I don't even know why I didn't write down other people's numbers, or why I really picked. Like I know I picked my family, but I don't know why I picked the pastor that I know and the guy that leads my. I think those just were the names that came to my head of who I can reach out for help or prayer or whatever. And so they take you into this, they put you in the telephone room and you're just in there. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what's going on. You just wait, right? Well, fast forward a little bit, I learned that you're in that room to try to call to find out if people can get you out. Well, I didn't know that, so I'm just sitting there, right? And I know, and technically, I think they're not supposed to hold you in there for more than 4 hours or something. I don't know. It's a certain amount of hours that they're technically not allowed to keep you in there. But they did want to give us every effort to get in touch with somebody who could bond us out, right? I didn't know that at the time. All of this was all new. So I'm sitting there and I see people using the phone and I'm just kind of like asking them like, what are we supposed to do? And they're like, well, if you can get in touch with anybody, you need to try to get in touch with them, else you got to go to jail, right? So I'm like, what? So I started calling those numbers, and by this time now it's like getting late into the night, right? And some people didn't answer because it comes from the county jail, so it's not like they're expecting a call from jail. And when the number comes up, they don't know it. Like if you're anything like me, I rarely ever answer numbers I don't recognize. I let them go to voicemail. Definitely not if it's like something that comes up like as telemarketing or spam or I don't know what came up on their phone, but I'm sure that they did not expect a call from jail, and they probably didn't recognize the number either. So I'm just trying to call people. I'm just trying to call all the numbers that I wrote down, right? So I did get in touch with my mom, right? And I did talk to my daughter as well. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I didn't really know the whole process, right? And I found out by talking to some people and kind of overhearing other people talking on the phone. Um, and I was just trying to talk to someone to say help. Like, can y'all help? Is there anything you can do? Like, I don't even know what to do, but can you help at all? And I found out that you call to get bonded out. They give you a bond amount, right? Whatever that amount is, and then ideally you would get somebody to be able to bond you out, which means they'll pay a bail bondsman and they'll come in, they'll sign you out and everything, and it's like a percentage of what the total bond amount that you get from the magistrate is. And mine was 5,000. All right, so my bond amount was 5,000. Usually they said it's like 10%. So if someone could come up with $500, they can come get me out of jail, right? Well, I didn't know all of how it all worked and everything, and so I'm calling around, and so I find this out, and I'm like, so I started to plead with people, all right, with my mom, and just saying, hey, listen, I don't. And at this point, I didn't know really how I would get bonds people's numbers. I didn't really find that out until I got into jail. But so I'm like, hey, this is the procedure. And they said if I have $500, like right now, I could have somebody come sign me out. I was like, well, I don't have that on me. I was like, well, mom, and I talked to my daughter too. And I was like, if you all call anyone that could come out, I'll pay them right back. I'll pay them right back. If they could just call a bondsman, set it up, do this, come get me. Well, my daughter's friend, like you had to be a certain age. They wouldn't let somebody under 18 come do it. And so that was a problem. My mom, I mean, she lives in Jersey and I'm down in North Carolina. So it wasn't like she could just call people here. And so I didn't know what to do. So I was just stuck. Nobody could come get me. The other people on, my pastor friend and guy from my men's group, it was really late. They were sleeping. And so I couldn't get in touch with anybody. And so this hopeless feeling started to take hold of me. Partly because it was the unknown, right? There was an unknown to this. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what was going on. My car's just left in a parking lot. Like I'm supposed to go to work the next day. I didn't even pick down a number of my boss, like, and so I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen. And so I wasn't panicking, but it started to grip me a little bit because I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going to happen. And now I'm just sitting in the cell. And so people one by one are getting bonded out. They're getting in touch with people to come get them. And so I'm the only one left in this room. And the prison guard, comes out and he's like, hey, are you able to get in touch with me? I was like, I haven't been, but I'm still trying. We're still trying. He was like, I can only give you like 15 minutes. I'm like, okay. So couldn't find anybody. 15 minutes passes. He comes and I was just like, I can't get in touch with anybody. So he was like, oh, well, unfortunately, I got to take you back. Right. We got to get you your jumpsuit and all that. And at this point now, that telephone room was my hope. The telephone room was what I knew. I knew what I was allowed to do. That was my hope. My hope to get in touch with somebody to get me out, to help me figure this out. That was my hope. And it was gone. So now the hopeless feeling really took hold, because now I don't know what's going on, right? And so I'm taken back to this room and I'm told I got to take off my clothes. I got to take off everything and my shoes, everything. And they give me an orange jumpsuit, a pair of boxers, and I think there were like there were 1 or 2 jumpsuits and 1 or 2 pairs of boxers, something like that. And so I have to change into this and they walk me back. And so I'm put in jail and I have this little Rubbermaid container, and that's supposed to be everything, right? And that's going to be my dresser in jail, basically. So I have the jumpsuit, I have my boxers, and I have this paper with numbers on it. Well, I don't know anything that's going on. I don't know how this works, right? And so they take me to a cell block. It's like cell block A. And so I'm in this cell block and they take me and another guy and they walk me to the cell and they put us both in it. Well, there were already 2 dudes in there. There's only space for 2 people. There's only 2 bunks, but there's 4 of us in this thing. So I was sleeping on, they give you like this mat, which is like an exercise mat, right? So there's barely any padding, but it's like an exercise mat and they give you that, right? And that's it. And that's what you're supposed to sleep on. And so I have my mat. So I'm like, well, the only space that I had was right next to the toilet. Right. So that's where I slept. And I mean, honestly, the foot of the mat that I slept on butted up against the bottom of the toilet. And so you're in this room that's basically, I mean, it's like a bathroom size. That's it, right? It's like 8 feet by 8 feet. Generally, right? You have enough room. There's 2 bunks against the wall. You have a sink and a toilet, and that's it. And you have space to stand up and turn around, but you don't have anything else. And so we're just put in there, and that's it. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if we're just in there all day. I don't know if we're going to be let out. So I was in there for the first 2 days, I think. It was the first couple days. And we were only let out once. And it was for an hour. And so we're just in that room for 23 hours. And they bring you your meal in the morning. It's like 5:30 in the morning. That's when your breakfast is. And then they give you lunch. But in this cell block, you don't go anywhere. They bring it to your door and they give it to you through the door. And so you're just in that room. And when you get out of that room, actually when I was in that cell block, I was only in there for the first day, I think, because I never got out. We never got to go outside, never got to go out of the room while I was in there. So I didn't even get to go out. I couldn't call anybody. I couldn't do anything, right? Ate and slept. That's it. So the next morning, they come in, they knock on the door and say, Miller. I was like, yeah. They said, grab your stuff. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Right. So I grabbed my stuff. Well, they took me to another cell block. All right. So they transferred me to cell block, I think it was C or something like that. So they walk me down to this cell, and there's 2 guys in it already, and then it's me, right? So I'm going to be their new cellmate. Well, again, there's only 2 bunks. They have the 2 bunks. They've been in there for a while. And so the only space for my mat was at the end of one of the bunks. Now it was next to the toilet. It wasn't, I probably had a shoulder width between my mat and the toilet. Right. And so, but in this room, you had 2 bunks, you had the sink and toilet, and then you had like a little counter, like a little desktop. It was like it was like the size of those old school elementary desks, like the wooden ones. Like it was only that big, right? But that was like the desk, and so that's where you put everything, really. Well, I still have my Rubbermaid thing, so that's at the foot of my bed, and so now I'm in this room, and I'll say this: fortunately, the 2 cellmates that I had, as far as cellmates go, were the best. They were the absolute best. Like, they were in there for a little while, and they were in there for much more serious things than I was in there for. One actually was very serious, but 2 guys, like the one guy was a Spanish guy. I didn't speak a whole lot of English, but and then the other guy was, was just this American guy. Both of them were cool though. Both of them were cool. And when I got in there, they introduced themselves. Like the American guy first was like, "Hey, I'm this. What's your name? Blah blah." And he was kind of like telling me what's going on, like in that cell block. And so he was like, "Hey, listen, these are the people that do this. Like, watch out for this. Don't do this. Blah blah." And he was telling me like the ins and outs, right? He was like, "Well, these are the things you should never do. These are the things you should focus on doing. Blah blah blah." Even was like, "Listen, this is if you're going to take a shower, like this is when you should shower, and this is what you should watch out for. And like if there's this many people in the shower, like don't do it, blah blah, whatever." It was all that kind of stuff. So which was cool because I didn't know anything, right? And so at least the cellmates that I got, I mean, this even sounds weird to say, but made my time in jail bearable. Like I could imagine if I had some of the people that were in there as a cellmate, like it wouldn't have been as bearable, right? And so I lucked out. So I'm in jail, and it's completely hopeless. Like I don't know what's going on, right? They have a court date for me, and they tell me when the date of the court date is, and the time, right? And so at least I have that to look forward to either get out, or they're going to tell me what's going on or whatever. Like I still don't know the whole process, but I'm learning as I'm in there. And just so you know, I was in jail for 10 days, right? It was some of the longest 10 days of my entire life. And it's not good, right? It's not like a pleasant place to be, right? I lost 25 pounds in 10 days because, not that they were starving us or anything, but like some of the food's barely edible. And so I ate peanut butter and jelly a lot. Sometimes I didn't eat, but what I learned was that, and you hear about these things and whatever, but I got to experience it firsthand. Food is currency, right? There's certain things that are currency, right? Like ramen noodles, that's like gold in there, right? And there's also some other things that you could trade for to get. So I was trying to trade for jelly like crazy, right? Because they give you these peanut butter packets a lot. They don't give you a whole lot of jelly packets, but they give you these peanut butter packets, and so I would save. They give you this weird sandwich meat that I would never eat. I would trade that for jelly or peanut butter or whatever. So I was always trading jelly for people's jelly. And I would save the bread, right? Usually they give you 3 slices of bread. I don't know why 3. Maybe they thought like a top, bottom, and you would put meat in between both of those on the middle piece of bread. But anyway, they give you 3 slices of bread. Well, I would usually use 1 slice of bread and make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and just fold it, right? And that was a sandwich. And I would eat that. And then I would have I would save one for lunch and dinner. And so, yes, it wasn't the best. eating. It definitely wasn't nutritious, and I lost a lot of weight. Right. Um, but so I learned that, right? And so um, one of the things about being in this certain cell block though is I learned that you got out twice. You got out twice, each for an hour and a half. Right. So you're still in your cell for 21 hours out of the day. 21 hours. Like, I just want you to think about that for a second. And I'm not playing a pity card or anything like that. I don't want you to think like that. But I do want to try to paint this picture for you that it wasn't fun. It wasn't a good thing. It wasn't just like, oh, I spent 10 days somewhere away from my house. So you're in your cell for 21 hours. You get out one time in the morning, one time at night. Basically, the way it worked was there was a top level, like a mezzanine level, and then there was a bottom level, right? I was on the mezzanine level. You alternated with the top floor and the bottom floor, who could go out for rec time, they called it. You didn't go outside. I think in 10 days we went out once. But you go out to this, it's an open area, just this big open concrete area that's indoors. And there's a TV on the wall and there's tables, right? And that's your common area. And so for the rec time, once in the morning, that's where you go. During that time, everybody got on the phones. Now, side note here, my heart broke. My heart broke a lot while I was in jail. But one very specific thing that my heart broke for were there were guys that never got on the phone. And it was because they didn't have anybody to call. And that broke my heart. Here I'm worried and I'm feeling hopeless and lost and I don't know what's going on. And yet I have some numbers of people that I can call. I can still talk to my family, albeit twice a day, if I'm lucky. I'd still get to talk to them and they don't have anybody to talk to. And that just broke my heart. A really cool thing that my cellmate did was I didn't know anything about the commissary, right? Like you, if you want to make phone calls or if you want to buy stuff like other things to eat, like more jelly packets or deodorant or toothpaste, or you have to have money. You have to have money put on your commissary that then you can use to purchase these things. Well, I didn't know anything like that. I just saw you were in there. You got to make a phone call, and well, one of my cellmates was like, "Listen, I know you, since you said you've never been in jail before, like you probably don't know how this works. So I'll let you use some of mine, right? I'll let you make a phone call with some of my money, and so you can call your family and ask them to put money on your commissary." And so he explained the whole thing to me. It was fantastic. I mean, it was great because I would have never known. I don't know how I would have found out. Well, knowing me, I probably would have just asked somebody, but it was just good to be guided in a certain way, right? So that I knew kind of how things work. And so, so those twice a day, you get out for rec time. It's an hour and a half. Now, here's the crazy thing. Sometimes the guards would take that away from you. And there were a lot of douchebag guards, right? But there were some really cool guards. There were some really cool guards, right? And even some Christian guards too that would tell you like a verse of the day, right? And they were cool. They weren't, they didn't think more highly of themselves than they ought to. You could tell the douchebags from the ones that weren't, right? But it was usually like the inmates, all of us. Now, not me, I wasn't there for that long, but the inmates that had been there for a long time. There were some people in there for life. Some of those inmates, they got to learn which guards were which. You know, like who were the douchebags and who weren't. And certain shifts, you could get away with certain things, right? Certain shifts, they would be more friendly, they'd be more personable. Certain shifts, though, you knew you could get your rec time taken away just because, and that did happen, right? So you're planning to get out and to get on the phones, and I can talk to my mom, I can talk to my son, I can talk to my daughter, I can talk to my family, right? And then it's just taken from you, and they don't even tell you. They just don't unlock the doors, right? So you knew at what time it was. You knew it alternated each week, I think, or each 2 days or something like that. So you knew kind of when. You didn't really know what time it was all the time. You could see kind of through your little hole in your door, or you could call on the intercom. But so you kind of knew when you'd be coming out, and but the door just wouldn't unlock, and so that was it. That was your announcement. That's how you found out that you lost your rec time, and you would call and say why. They wouldn't give you an answer. It was just that the guards just didn't want you to. They wanted to be douchebags, which is crazy. And a side note, it's not surprising how some of the inmates acted towards some of these guards, because some of the guards that got treated poorly by the inmates treated the inmates like animals. They literally treated them like animals. And I just kept thinking, like, if these guards were smart at all, if they had half a brain, they would understand, like, if I just treat them like a human, regardless of what they've done, because there were some serious things that were done. But regardless of what any of the inmates did, they're still people, they're still human. Treat them like a human being. And maybe they will act out against you. But I don't know, that's just me. I think I have common sense. So you weren't ever sure if you were going to get rec time or not, because it could be taken from you. But when you did get rec time, that was your time to do anything that you wanted to do outside of your room. So shower, watch TV, play cards, whatever. A lot of people play chess. I actually learned how to play chess in jail. And it's kind of cool. Like, I learned how to play chess, and I won a couple times. Like, it was cool. But take a shower, play chess, play cards. You can sit and watch TV. You can walk around. Some people just took laps, to exercise a little bit. Some people did push-ups, pull-ups, things like that. But that was like the big time was to shower, right? Because you only showered during those times. And it was also a time to get on the phones and check your commissary and what you wanted to get in. But checking the phones getting on the phones was a big thing. It was like Black Friday sale at a store, right? Like, you had to stand in line and you had to, like, barter with people, like, hey, can I be next? Can you hold my, all that stuff, right? And people would, like, run to the phones, and there were certain phones that never worked, and it was a mess. But every time I got on the phone, every single time I got on the phone, it was heartbreaking, because I didn't know if I'd ever get out. I didn't know if I was going to get out, right? I found that, I had to find, here was my mission, was to find someone that could come up with the bond money to get me out. But then the issue was, because this is what I was being told, the issue was somebody would have to come and sign me out. That was the big issue. Well, it's interesting because I think of me in this situation, and I can say this because I was in that position. Before, maybe I don't know if I could say it. And if you haven't been in this position, I don't know how, if you could say this or not. But I think of me if I was in this position and somebody that I knew was in jail and they needed to be bonded out, and they just needed somebody to come sign out for them. And I knew them. It wasn't like some just random person. Like, I knew them, right? And I knew they were going to pay me back. And all I had to do was come up with a little bit of money, sign them out, and that they would pay me right back. So just, like, on the way, drop him off wherever they needed to go. Like, no questions asked. I would go. I would do it. I would bond them out. I can say that because I was in that position. And it was fascinating to me how many people would not do it. And I get it. The big holdup for everybody wasn't the money. The big holdup for everybody was that if they come and sign me out, that they could be held liable, right? They had to sign the paper and say they were held liable if I didn't show up to court. And I thought, I get that. I totally get that. And that's understandable. But y'all know me. Y'all know me. And if there's any thought inside your head that I would do that to someone, that's crazy. And so there were so many people that would not do it because they didn't want to be the name on the paper. And I just kept saying, like, where am I going to, I'm not going to run. I'm not a fugitive. I didn't break the law, right? Like, I wouldn't do that. So long story short, or long story longer, no one would come. And I couldn't get anybody to come. And so every time I'm on the phone, it was like, I would cry, but you can't really just be bawling in front of everybody, right? So I'm trying to hide it, and my kids are crying, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, and everybody has questions for me. Everybody had questions for me because I get it. They know me. They want to believe me. I get that. Not everybody wanted to believe me. There were some people, a few people, and obviously I'm not going to name them, but there were a few people who really wanted me to be punished, who really wanted to believe that I was guilty, even though I wasn't. I did not do what they said I did. But there were certain people that convinced themselves that I was, because I had to be the villain in their story. But other people had legitimate questions. They literally, legitimately wanted to find out the truth, and they wanted to believe me so bad. But like there's the what I'm being accused of and what the paper says is in conflict with what they want to believe with what I'm saying. And so they're trying to figure out the truth. So everybody had questions. And so my phone time was spent answering a lot of questions, telling them the truth. I said this phrase over and over, like almost every time I was on the phone. I was like, all I can tell you is the truth. That's what I said over and over. Like, all I can tell you is the truth. And so my phone time was spent on that. And it was also spent on letting people know like I'm okay, and what's going on. And and I'm missing things in my kids' lives, and they're telling me about them. And my heart is being ripped out of my chest every day, every day. And so my cell, I'll just tell you a couple things. Where the way my cell was positioned, it was the only cell that was off camera. So my cell was used for all the stuff that needed to happen where nobody could know. Okay. And we'll leave it at that. Again, if you want to talk about this in more details, reach out to me. I'll definitely talk to you about it. But anything that needed to happen that guards couldn't know about or anybody watching the cameras couldn't see had to happen in our room because we were the only ones off camera. So we had like 30 seconds. Someone would come to us and say, we need your room. And we knew exactly what it was for. And so we had to get in there, get everything off the floor, like that kind of stuff. And so that was happening, right? And so there was, it wasn't a fun time, right? Like there was a certain hierarchy in the jail, and there were things like unwritten rules that you had to abide by, and so there was that danger, right? So that was one thing. Some other stuff is you're just in the room, you're just laying all day, and the only thing you can do is sleep or read, right? Because you're just in this cell, or talk to your cellmates, but you can't do anything. And the times that you don't get out, like there were times we didn't get out, so we were in the cell for we were in the cell for 24 hours or more, just sitting there, like your mind races. And I've never had a panic attack in my life until I was in jail. And I didn't know that that's what I was having. I didn't understand that I was having a panic attack, but I think I had 3 of them. From what people described to me as a panic attack, I had 3 of those while I was in jail. And I had never experienced that before, but it's scary. It really is. It's scary because, and I'll tell you when, the first one happened when I was in there and realized we're not getting let out, right? Like the first hopeless feeling when I got into the cell where my car is there, I don't know what's going on with that. My job, I don't know what's going on with that. My family, I don't know what's going on. Like if I'm ever getting out, I don't know what's going on with that. And I started to panic, and I'm not like that, but it was literally hopeless. Like I'm in jail. Like there's literally nothing I can do. And so that was a panic. Another time was the same thing when I started to when I couldn't call my family for a whole day. Like I could not call them for 24 hours. And so I couldn't tell them anything. They were expecting me to call because they knew 2 times a day I would be able to call. And they knew that, and I wasn't able to. And we were just in the room. And so then you start to panic because I'm like, I'm severely missing my kids and my family. And is this going to be what my life is like? Like what in the world? So you panic. And then another time, here's a big moment where I really panicked. I had whatever they described as a panic attack. I had a court date one morning, and it was scheduled. I was supposed to be ready to be picked up at like 8:00, right? So I was, breakfast comes at 5:30. I was already up. I was wide awake, right? So you had breakfast, right? And in this cell, you got to go out. You got to walk down the stairs to go get there. So that was good. You got to stretch your legs, but then you had to go right back in your room. But I was ready, right? And I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm awake. I got my stuff that I need. And 8:00 comes around. Nobody comes and gets me. It's 8:15. Nobody comes and gets me. So I push the intercom button. I call in and I said, hey, I'm supposed to have a court date today, but no one came and got me. And I was told they would come get me by 8:15 or 8:00. And they said, okay, let me check. And all they said was, no, you've been removed from the docket. That was it. I was like, wait, so then what? And they were like, well, we don't know any other information. And they hung up. That was it. So I'm like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? How will I find out what that means? Like, do I get another court date? Did they like, I don't know anything. Now, prior to that, right, the night before I had talked to Austin. I said, listen, my court date is tomorrow at this time. I think it was 9 a.m. And they're going to come pick me up at this time. And so she was planning to come. She was like, Dad, I want to come to the court date because I want to give you a hug. And I was like, oh my, that would be fantastic. That would be amazing. All right. And so I was so ready to see her and give her a hug. And they take me off the docket and they took our rec time. So I didn't even get to go out and call her until that night. So that morning rec time was gone. So I was up at 5 o'clock or earlier, and it wasn't until I think it was like 9 o'clock or something around there. That was our rec time. That was the next time I could use the phone. So I called her at night. So I go the whole day, and mind you, I had what they would describe as a panic attack during that time, because now I don't have a court date, and now I'm like, am I just in here? What happens to me? So I started to panic a little bit because I just didn't know what was going on. Talked to my daughter at night and she's like, Dad, why didn't you show up for your court date? And I was like, no, listen, let me tell you what happened. I explained her everything and she was like, well, we went. She was like, and all they said was, when they called your name and all they said was, we're moving his court date to January, whatever. And she's like, you didn't know? I'm like, no. I was like, wait a second. They rescheduled my court date for January, it was like 23rd. I was like, for January 23rd? She was like, yes. She was like, nobody told you? I was like, no, nobody's told me anything. So I wouldn't have even known had I not talked to Austin. Had she not gone, how would I have known? Had she not gone to my court date and heard them call my name and say that, I would have never found, like, how would I have ever known? So I find out that they rescheduled my court date to January. Well, this was September. I'm in September. So now I got to go October, November, December, 4 months, 4 more months. I have to be in jail. So man, it was like a full-blown panic attack. And I had to slow down my breathing. I had to literally, I had to go back to who I really was. Like, I had to say, no, I'm going to overcome this. I had to will myself over this panic attack. And if I started to think of the 4 months, it started to well up inside of me again. And I had to consciously battle that and suppress that. And I literally had to think my way. I mean, I was talking out loud too, but my way through this. 4 months, I would have to stay in jail. And that was it, right? Like, I would lose my house, lose my job, like I would lose everything. 4 months. And so I'm able to get on the phone with my family. I explained to them, I explained my family, what's going on and everything. And so my sister, and this was, my sister is calling bondsmen in the area. And apparently she found a bondsman because everyone that she spoke to said, no, it has to be someone in state. Because, and they have to cover their own butt, like if I'm going to run or leave the state, but she found one bondsman that would allow them to do it out of state. And this, I didn't know I didn't find this out until after, but apparently what was going on was the bondsman was going to let them do it out of state, but he was going to take a little bit more money. It was like $700 something. He was going to take a little bit more money. And what I found out was that my niece was going to drive after work. My niece and my nephew, they were going to drive after my niece got off work. They were going to drive to North Carolina. It was 10 hours. They were going to drive 10 hours. And she didn't get off work till 5. So this was through the night. 10 hours they were going to drive to come and get me out of jail. Like, are you kidding me right now? And when I heard that, I can't even tell you, I can't even describe how grateful I was that she was willing to do that. I can't even tell you how grateful. Now, we weren't sure that she was going to be able to do that. Like, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if she was going to be able to do it or if the bondsman was gonna allow her to do that, like, drive or whatever. Um, and I didn't know if my niece would wait till when she would be able to do it, like, if she really was gonna do it overnight, because that could be dangerous, like her falling asleep while she's driving and all that stuff. And so, it was still a little bit unknown, but I knew that I had some hope. I knew that we'd be able to come up with the money and someone would be willing to come down if the bondsman would let somebody from out of state come and do that. So after the excitement and the hope that I was filled with, like, oh, this might work. Then I was angry, man. I was angry at the people who wouldn't do it. When my niece and my nephew, who we don't talk a lot, we talk when I go up there and I see them. They're my sister's kids, and I love them. Yeah, absolutely. Um, when I lived up there, I was more around them because I was up there. That was so long ago. But like we don't talk really outside of me going up there. I don't really know what goes on in their lives. They don't really know what goes on in mine. And without question, no questions asked, my niece and nephew said, "Yeah, we'll go." And I'll tell you, I thanked them later, and their responses were family. And that was the reason I was so angry with people because we were family, yes, but they weren't connected to me. We barely talked except if I went up there to visit. And people that I was connected to on a regular basis chose not to do that. Um, and I'm not saying one way or the other that they should have or should not have. I know everybody has their reasons, right? And they're legitimate reasons to them. And it's not fair for me to it wasn't fair for me to be angry with them. I get that, and I've repented of that and asked God to forgive me of that. But you don't understand? Like, you don't understand that that's how I would feel? I tried a lot of people. Everyone said no because they didn't want to put their name on the line. And they knew me. And we actually did life together. And they didn't want to do it. But two of my family members who we never talk, except if I go up to visit, who don't know anything about my life and I don't really know anything about theirs, right? Simply for the fact that they're my family. No questions asked, they're willing to do it. They don't even care. And so that puts some things into perspective, but that's not what this episode's about. So I'm like anticipating this time when I might get out because it still wasn't definite. But I had some hope that I wasn't going to be in there for the next 4 months, and that helped me get through, right? And so, and all you do in your room is you sleep, right? And so I'm going to sleep, and I don't even know what time it was. It might have been 4 in the morning, 4:30 or something, right? And I get a knock at the door, on our cell door. They said, "Miller." I was half asleep, like I had just fallen asleep. And so I wait, I was like, "What?" I didn't even know what was going on. They were like, "Grab your things." I was like, "Wait, what? For what?" They were like, "Just grab your things." I was like, "Where am I going?" And they're like, "You're leaving." I was like, "What?" I was like, I don't understand." They were like, "Do you not want to go? Like, do you want to stay here?" I was like, "No." I grabbed my stuff and I was like, "What do you mean I'm leaving?" They were like, "Well, somebody's here. They bonded you out." I was like, "Wait, what?" So the first thought that went through my head was my niece and nephew drove through the night. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is like unbelievable." Right. And they walk me out and I'm going to go get my stuff. And like they get my stuff. They take you to a room to check you out basically. And you get all your stuff, whatever. And I walk out and I don't see my niece and nephew. I'm like, I see some dude that I've never seen before in my life. And he's looking at me. He's like, "Jay." I was like, "Yeah, who are you?" And they were like, and I didn't know who he was. And he was like, I'm the bondsman who's been talking to your sister." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "My niece and nephew I thought they were planning it." And he was like, "Listen, I told your sister that's too dangerous to have your niece and your nephew drive through the night and all that kind of stuff and come do this." So he was like, I just volunteer. Like, if they can do the money online or like over the, wire the money, then I will just come get you. And so he signed me out and I was bonded out. And it was a surreal feeling because 10 days in jail feels like an eternity. And my heart breaks still for the guys that were in there that are in there for life or are in there for years. Right. And it makes my 10 days seem really minuscule. But I'll tell you this in comparison, but when you're not putting it in perspective, when you're not comparing it to somebody who's in there for life, right? When you're just taking it at face value, 10 days in jail is not good. And I may share sometime on this podcast some other things that happened in jail. And there were some really cool things that happened in jail too. Like, just some of the conversations I had with my cellmates, and we got to talk about the Bible, and every night they, to end rec time at night during the nighttime one, I don't know if they did it in the daytime too. I can't remember, but we would circle up and we would sing, right? Or we'd pray, or we'd read scripture, we'd pray, and then someone would sing. And God, these two guys that would sing normally, their voices were unbelievable. It was awesome, right? So that was cool. We're like worshiping God in the prison, and so that was cool. Some other cool things happened just with like conversations and things like that. And but it's not like it made jail fun. Like it wasn't cool. It wasn't good. Like I don't want to go back. It wasn't a pleasant 10 days. And so I get bonded out, right? Well, this bail bondsman, he picks me up and he's like, "Hey, I'm here to get you." And I was like, "Okay, I don't understand what this means, right? But thank you, like thank you for doing this, blah blah." So he signs me out. I'm like, "That's it?" He's like, "Yeah." So he takes me, and he's like, "Do you have a ride?" And I was like, "No, I didn't even know I was getting out right now." He's like, "Do you have a ride?" I was like, "No, I'll just walk." Right? And he's like, "Well, I'm going in this direction, but I can only take you for like a mile or two down the road, and then I have to go the other direction." I was like, "Yeah, that's fine. If you just take me to this McDonald's, I'll get on Wi-Fi and I'll start reaching out to people and let them know now whatever's going on." And so um, he did that. He took me to this McDonald's. He explained to me how the bond thing works and all that kind of stuff. So I am bonded out of jail, and the guy drops me off at a McDonald's, and I go in and I hook up to their Wi-Fi and I sit down and I start to call or text people, just letting them know that I'm out and whatnot. I'm going to finish this episode here. That went really long, actually way longer than I wanted to, honestly. But I guess when you're talking about this section of the 9-year journey, this particular section, there's a lot to unpack. A lot of it is very crucial to my healing. And so, I get it. I do apologize for it going so long, but what's going to happen though is we're going to have to continue this on another episode. I'm going to try to record another episode before, in time to post on Friday, all 3 parts, right? Like each part of this season, Surrender to Jail. But before I sign off, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I pray, I always have prayed that this podcast would help at least one person. And I've already heard from some of you that how it's helping and how it's encouraging and how it's relatable. And I love that. And that keeps fueling me to do this, continue to do it. It makes it all worth it. So thank you so much. Again, reach out to me. I want to connect with y'all. I would love to even talk to any of you that are listening. I would love to talk to you about maybe even being a guest on the podcast, so we could talk about an aspect of my story and how it relates to yours, or an aspect of your story and how you dealt with it. And the point of this whole thing is that we're healing and we're growing and we're being restored all together. And so I think that would be a lot of fun. So if you're interested, let me know. Reach out to me, unfeignedpodcast@gmail.com. Again, unfeignedpodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow this podcast on Spotify. That's important so you don't miss any new releases or updates. And also look out for the YouTube channel coming out, where I'm going to just do a little video, like quick shorts, right? And like short clips of, whatever. But it'll be on the YouTube channel. I'll put that out when we're going to release that. But look out for that. And again, thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, see you then.